What a beautiful film. I'm here to help the conversation connect the Irish and the Native experience. So I'm the education director here, Patrick O'Donnell, and we are very interested in the confluence of Irish and Indigenous experience and history and culture. And my job tonight is simply to be a little bit of a facilitator. And so I'll turn the mic over and have people introduce themselves. And we very much want to get questions from the audience. Okay, so it is such a beautiful film, and so I'm just going to turn it over. Start off with Ramona.
Ami taka yapi, hampetakinde owasi, chante washdan hampechuzapie, Reuben Kitto Stately and makiapie, Dakota, Dakota ia iupseu sewi bieye, Isayanti hechia tahama hie, Takawana shape edwati. Hello, my relatives. I'm so grateful to be here today. I always like to begin with the Dakota language. So really the foundation of culture is the language. That's where you understand and learn the values. So I said Hami Takuyapi, standard greeting, but it means hello, my relatives, but that's like the white translation, but it translates into I am greeting everything that has life. So I'm talking about all the living beings and the things that have life on this earth. And if we think about the world as a relative and those trees and the water and the medicines that grow, we make very different decisions. And we have seen, just in Minnesota, how people have come here and made really bad decisions because they don't have a relationship to this land in this place. So I'm excited to be here, especially because I know many people are revitalizing language, and that is really the key. So I'm grateful, so grateful to be here and to learn about where our old tribal societies, customs, values, and the Irish ones intersect and are so similar. So thank you.
Midakipi Reuben Makiab Gamaza Edidi Hemie, Dama Kotga Kaka Tuai Macha, Vadeshaya de Nai Santi Mataha, Washituya, Red Lake Nation, Omawapi na Imataha, Indonesia Sky Macha, Washituya, St. Paul, Imacha, Takawana Shak Pe Otuma and Wati, Inawa Ramona, Kitto Stately, Chiab, Na. Okshina Himacha Heha, Dakota be wo Muspemiche na wo Haraka. How's it going, everybody? So it's good to be with you all tonight. My name is Reuben Kitto Stately. I am a Dakota. I'm also a member of Red Lake Nation. And so I added something at the end of my introduction. But I like to tell, I want to now, when I speak and say my introduction, I like to tell people where I learned to speak Dakota. So I accredited my mom at the end. When I was a little boy, I said, when I was a little boy, I learned, my mom's name is Ramona, and when I was a little boy, she spoke to me and taught me Dakota. And so anyway, I think that for non-native speakers, it's cool to hear where I learned it from, but also, you know, people who do speak, that'll probably tickle them. Like, wow, he learned it at home. That's so cool. So anyway, I'm really glad to be here tonight and, you know, share some time with you all.
Rita is Anam Dum. Motua is Dalkas. Diariv Agus Falcha Rohiv. My name is Rita. My clan is the Dalcash from County Clare. A warm hello and a big welcome to everybody here. The reason that this is a special night for me is that in 2019, we had an event here, thanks to Pete McCauley, who some of you know. He said, well, you're doing a crowdfunding campaign. Are you going to have an event to launch it off? I said, I've never done this before. I don't know. Do I need an event? He said, yes, come to Celtic Junction. And you all just rolled out the welcome mat for us, and it was a very fun evening, and it did the trick. We raised our goal in a couple weeks, so it helped the film get done. And back then the film was called Burn Girl, and if you want to see a second film about the Irish history of my family, you can see that on Amazon now. It's the second film. So anyway, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much to Patrick and Natalie and Cormac and Christo, who's handled all the tech here tonight. It's very fun to bring this film home here.
So at Celtic Junction, we have been engaging in various programs to explore parallels between Irish and Indigenous culture. We just had our Irish language weekend. We are trying to widen the conversation. We're trying to elevate the consciousness, as Ramona has said. And so I'll just ask one question here, and then I hope that you will be ready in the audience. So please be ready with a kind of a question or a comment. We do want to open it up to the audience. But I took a few notes, Ramona. Beautiful nuggets of wisdom. But one of the things you said that I thought was really fantastic was that we need a conversation out of our spirit. I wonder if you could talk more about how that has been unfolding since the film has started. Easy question. Quoting you.
So I think what I'm talking about there is that when we speak the truth, it comes really naturally. We even have that word, I heard it tonight, Badote, right? Natalie said she lives at Badote. That's describing this right here in our throat. Dote is our throat. But when you say Badote, it's describing that vessel where we speak, but also like where we breathe, that very first breath of life. Most important thing, and it's connected to our hearts. So I think that's what I was talking about. I'm not really sure, but about that particular. But that's what I'm saying is, even when our stories are told, they're the same, right? Our stories are told and told and told over and over again. They never change. But when we walk away, we take something different from it because we're in a different place.
All right, so let me try and open it up to the audience here. If anybody has a, go ahead, Jane. Thank you.
Yes, hi. I was wondering, it was very lovely. I just really enjoyed the film. Thank you. Very moving. My question is, Rita and Ramona, how did your friendship come together? How did you meet? How did your relationship start?
Let's see. Well, I went on the Badote tour, which you can do through the Humanities Center, and you can go to the sacred sites around the Twin Cities and learn. And so I'd been on that tour, I think 2 or 3 different times, and it really hit home for me and meant a lot. And so when I was making the film, and all of a sudden it took this turn, big turn from being about my Irish history to all of a sudden now we're in, I have to say Melody Gilbert's name because she wished she could be here. She lives out of town now, but she was my co-producer. And I was making this film about my Irish history, right? And I got a grant from O'Shaughnessy Foundation and hired her. And once she came on board, she's a documentary filmmaker like none you've ever met. And I was so lucky to have her. She was my teacher over at Film North. And so this is a roundabout way of answering this, but she followed me around for a couple weeks trying to get into the film as we were progressing. And one day she just said, Rita, I'm sorry, we're not making a film about your grandma, your Irish grandma. She said, we're making a film about you and why you're so passionate about your family history. And I said, no. I said, no, I have no interest. I don't want to be on the other side of the camera. And but she kept pushing me. And so we would go places, and then all of a sudden she would listen to me, and I would tell stories about my life. And pretty soon I'm talking about the ancestry and what happened at Pike Island from my family standpoint. And she said, Rita, there's a film here. And so it took off from there. But once we broached that part of my family history, I knew we couldn't do it. I could not tell that story because, number one, I don't know it beyond my own family's 16 years there. But two, there's another peoples here whose story I don't know and I don't have any business telling. So I thought to myself, okay, we need a Dakota person to be interviewed here. And I thought, I knew Ramona, she didn't know me, but I knew her from those tours. And I thought, if there's anybody I could dare to say something about this and to invite, it's Ramona. So I did. I asked her and she said yes. And we went to your house and no, first we went to the Overlook and filmed there. And then I said, could we do one more interview at your, see where you live. So we went there and Reuben was there. And once that happened, the film just took on a life of its own and there was no looking back. And Ramona and I got to work together then. And I think you should tell from there what happened.
I let her come over because she said she'd bring Irish soda bread, and it was so good. I have spent a long time researching family history. I know the passion behind it. I know how important it is, the impact it has on family, and I'm busy. And a lot of people reach out to ask some things, and I try to help. That was a big ask because I was really busy. But meeting Rita, I knew that she had that passion and that drive and that she was in it, right? And I wanted to help her however I could put one puzzle piece into that because it's been so amazing for our family. So, and Rita, you gotta love Rita. And we've had some exciting things since then. She's taken me to her home place and Reuben. And so it's been just really an amazing friendship. But I think, when someone speaks to you heart to heart, that from the get-go, and that it was that way.
I was just curious if there's any progress, going forward about the possibility of giving back that land, which, your family no longer owns. I mean, there's been a few headlines popping up about some state parkland going back to me. So there's, it's nothing large on the scale of what was taken away, but, there seems to be a wee bit of progress. Any more information on that?
Well, since this film came out in 2020, nobody was talking about that then that I knew except the Indian Land Tenure Foundation. But once we got the thread of that going on in the film, I had to make a big decision, and I just decided that my role is going to be getting this film done and getting it out in the world and opening minds and doors that way to some of these ideas like land back. And I think it's done that. And I also knew that I was not the person to go after. I don't have any of what you need to launch a project like that, and I needed to do this instead. But there's all kinds of possibilities now that you can look at if you want to make a difference. A movement called Beyond Land Acknowledgement. So a lot of organizations have land acknowledgement statements, but they don't really make a difference. Mm-hmm. So if you look at nativegov.org, or if you look at the Indian Land Tenure Foundation website, you can see almost a curriculum on what's beyond land acknowledgement, what do we do next to put something right. You can't change the past, but you can always put something right in the present. And I think each of us can find a way to do that. So I'm excited about all that.
So I'd really like to see Pike Island, we call it Wita Tonka. We'd love to see that given back. It was sold shortly after Rita got it. Rita's grandpa got it, was to, what's her name, Pelagie Faribault?
Right.
Was that before or after?
After.
So they did give it to a woman. They knew that that was a birthing island, you know? So we're doing a lot of work in birthing justice right now. We have several birthing places, and that's one, another St. Anthony Falls. And now the federal government has given that Army Corps of Engineers mess that they made there at that island, they've given that back. And now the city is working with the 4 Dakota tribes to take that over. And so I'd like this to be a piece of that. It's hard to say, but it definitely has always, and that's why they gave it away in the 1800s to a woman, a Dakota woman. So it kind of makes sense. I would love to see that. It's so, you have to visit there. It's a powerful place.
Yeah, Rita, you had some difficulty talking to your brother. How has that progressed? And I have a brother, but I talk to you less than I should.
Yeah, the thing I learned there, because I never had a big important conversation with my brother before my whole life, where I actually stood my ground and didn't try to argue, because he's trained as a lawyer. He argues for a living, and I knew that wasn't going to work, and that's how most people communicate with him, is through arguing when there's any kind of disagreement. So I wasn't going to do that. So you see me, I tried something I'd never tried before. I just decided to listen. And I listened and I listened, and I had to bring up the topic over weeks. And the film stopped because I wasn't going to make this film over, you know, I wasn't going to throw my family under the bus to make a film. So we stopped everything. I said, I can't go on with this until we see where this is going to go, because he was dead set against anything. But we kept at it, and he finally turned around, and he was still mad at me when the film came out in its longer version. But then we had to cut it 17 minutes off to go on PBS, and so I cut out some of his part, and I sort of redid the focus, the biggest focus, and he saw that version. He said, hey, this isn't hard on me. So and then he started asking me for books to read. That's brand new. So he's learning, and I learned from him, because it's not like what he was saying is false. Like, you can't blame our ancestors who came from somewhere hard and came here and were given the opportunity to get land and didn't know much else. They should have known, because the Irish went through the same thing, right? That's what puzzles me. Like, how could you not understand what's going on? But anyway, it's not about blame. It's about facing a history, letting yourself feel all the feelings that come up, and then processing that so that you can have integrity, be pleased with yourself, and not defend or deny the history. That's what I was trying to do. So.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Facing our history, just to come back, and this has been in my mind since the beginning of this film, when Ramsey came up, and I had lunch with a friend of mine who's Dakota, older elder, and I'm Celtic, I'm full blood Irish and Scottish. And is there any movement to get Ramsey County renamed? Chris has brought that up to me.
What about Hennepin?
Chris is a relative.
Yeah.
He has brought that up to me. And, you know,
Lots of them, but
yeah, you know. And, you know, when I had lunch many months ago, you know, it was like painful to watch him talk about it. you know, to be in the presence of your elderly relative. And he like goes in and out of like speaking English in Dakota, you know, and he translates for me. And you know, honestly, it really strikes me as painful for the elders to have to experience a county being named after somebody. And he's a medicine. Being harmed directly.
So I don't know if you heard her question was, you know, it must be painful for Ramsey County, things like that. Names matter, namings matter. Reuben calls it unnaming, unrenaming. So we did the very first stories I didn't know we did in, what was it, White Bear Lake? And we did it in person after COVID. And there were, you know, a lot of people in the audience. We were answering questions. And this lady stood up and she said, I'm so embarrassed. She said, I had to take my hat off. She said, I didn't know this history and I am the commissioner of Ramsey County.
Wow.
So there is purposeful, harmful narratives, miseducation about all kinds of people. You know, the techniques here are divide and conquer. That's why these kind of things are so important to me. Is like our allies. Who are our allies? Who prefers differences than to similarities, right? We're so different, but we're just so rock solid because of the ancestors whose shoulders we stand on. And a lot of people have identity issues in America because they've in our language we call it chekpa oichida. They're searching for their umbilical. Wherever your umbilical cord is cut is where your spirit lives. And so if we don't acknowledge that place, we're kind of like lost, right? And so there's some real harmful narratives. We're probably the only continent that doesn't acknowledge like the civilization, the history of civilization. I mean, what if they did that in Greece or China, right? But they do it in America. It's staggering. So we need to learn the true history of place, because when we can make good decisions about place, which means we have to have all the information, right? We have to be able to have all of it, good, bad, and ugly, to make decisions, then we'll have a healthier community. And we have to let people know that the healthiest communities are those that are diverse. But we don't do that, right? We kind of separate and, what's the word? There's a hierarchy where there doesn't need to be. So that's a great question. I'm hoping that Alexander Ramsey, our very first governor in Minnesota, hated Indians. In fact, he told the Minnesota legislature, and he's known for saying, the Sioux Indians of Minnesota must be exterminated. That's what he told the Minnesota legislature. The Sioux Indians of Minnesota must be exterminated or driven forever beyond the borders of this state. And they were. So it is still against the law for me and my son and my daughter to live within the borders of the state. It's still a law. They won't even change it. So a lot to do. Part of it is learning, you know, the true history, because it's we're invisible in that way because we don't know the history. Indians are invisible because what we do know is Columbus discovered America, right? That's what we're teaching. We're still teaching that. And if you don't believe me that people believe that, go back and look at some of those articles when Columbus statue was pulled down, right? So people believe what happened to Indians happened in 1492, so get over it. It's done and gone. And that is triggering. But what we also don't know is our contemporary status. That our tribal nations in Minnesota are the 14th largest employer in the state. And that is, above us is Walmart and Target. We know how they hire part-time, But these are full-time jobs, 72% white people. And we're asking for a true history. You know, it's not a lot. Our tribal nations in Minnesota are the second largest tourism draw to our state. That brings tons of dollars to our state, yet we're invisible. So a lot of those solutions come from our tribal nations, comes from our people, because we've been here 12,000 years. We know how to survive. We're strong, like you are, right? We come from that. And that's the beautiful thing. I think that's the scary thing, you know, baby to others. So Ramsey will have his day. Some seventh graders took care of him at that Justice Page Elementary or middle school. Seventh graders changed the name, so I have hope. Need something done, get a seventh grader.
So Reuben, I appreciated what you said about separating out not just the trauma, but like there's a bigger tapestry here. Talk about how that informs your songwriting and storytelling. Certainly there was trauma in the sample that was showed in the movie, but talk more about how that kind of stuff informs the work that you do.
Awesome. I like this question. It's a great one. I also liked the mentioning of Chris Matonupa and like would we ever change and change the name of Ramsey County. I just want to speak to that real briefly too. I think that, so I like to joke and say unrename. So they unrenamed what was Lake Calhoun, but a Makaska. So for a long time, millennia, it was called something else, and then only for 80 or so years it was called Lake Calhoun. And then all these people were like, oh my gosh, like 50 years ago my relative called it that, and it's like, it's just kind of funny that, you know how many other people called it not that for a way longer time. So it's just kind of interesting to see people and not even in a judgmental way, in a very like matter-of-fact way. It's pitiful for somebody to only see their own point of view, and so what do you even say to that, you know? And so that's just one of those things where I was in the comments on Instagram under Star Tribune going to war, so that was me during that time. But anyway, so I jokingly say those things or whatever, but something about like when we say history or whatever, and I think that when we say historical trauma, white people or non-native people, they'll hear history and they'll turn their ears off. They think that history means a long time ago. And when we're talking about, so a great example is like 1492, those things happened a long time ago, get over it and all those things. 162 years ago, 163 years ago was the U.S. Dakota War. 4 generations of my family ago, my great-great-great-grandfather was in his early 20s and fought the U.S. Army. He was supposed to be hanged with the 38 when there was originally 303, and Abraham Lincoln said you can't hang 303, you can hang some, or whatever. So he imprisoned the rest, and they were incarcerated in Davenport, Iowa. And so my great-great-great-grandpa, he was incarcerated in Davenport. And so he like has a family and all these things, but throughout his life, his grandsons, they go to World War I in 1917. And my great grandpa died in Paris, liberation of France. And mind you, none of these people are citizens. None of these Dakotas are citizens. We weren't citizens till 1924. So Mata Adidi, who fought the U.S. Army a long time ago, his grandsons, they fight on behalf of the U.S. Army Air. And then the man I'm named after is Reuben Kitto Sr., her grandpa. Yeah. And then yeah, and then popular name in our family. And so anyway, I'm just telling, so this is my great grandpa, and then my grandpa, her dad, he went to Korea when he was 17. That was his ticket out of poverty, I guess, is joining the Navy. And so it's just one of them things where, this is my grandpa, and he told me all these stories, and he knew a lot of the people in these stories, and so it's not historical then, because he's telling me right now. And so when they think of like historical trauma and all these things, and then also my dad, he went to Chamberlain. He went to a boarding school in Chamberlain, and he has like survived real hardships of Native kids who went to boarding schools, where they re-educate you, they Christianize you, they want you to be white, they don't want you to do anything having to do with being Indian. And so it's not that historical then, is it? If it was how I was raised. I was born in 1999. Everyone in this room, you guys remember 1999? I don't know how a VCR works. So gotta think, that was really recent. Anyway, I just wanted that to say, when we're thinking about stuff, it's all connected, and all of it it's closer than we think. And so that's something that I wanted to just shed light upon and say about that part of the conversation. And of course, all of the things that I am and all of the things that I just told you about make me proud. And it's like, this is all the things I draw from as an artist, And so I'm a scholar sometimes, we all put on a million different hats just to be members of the world. So you all probably know what I'm talking about, but sometimes I'm just a son or an uncle or whatever, and then sometimes I'm a scholar or whatever, but before I'm anything, I'm a Dakota. And then sometimes I'm an artist, and I love being an artist. So all of that critically informs myself as like in my expression through music and whatever else. So yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Sean. Thank you.
So I'm here taking all this in. I'm thinking, there is a farm on public land in British Columbia that has my family's name on it, where some of my ancestors lived and established the place. And I know absolutely nothing of the history of the people who lived there before they did. And I'm wondering, what words of advice would you have for starting that journey of learning this?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. There's a website where you could put the address in and it tells you who lived there, like what nation lived there. That's the beginning, but I can't remember the name of it.
.ca. I remember
Yeah.
the website. I can find it.
Do you know it, Katie?
I'm terrible at remembering details, but no, I know that there is one, and I've looked at it and put in.
Yeah, it's a map, and you just
it's a really cool
put
map.
the address in. It tells you who lived there, so that would be a start.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Knowing it exists, I should be able to find it fairly readily.
Yeah.
That's
It's really-
Any final questions? I have one last question for you guys. So this is a confluence because last year these guys came to Armagh, to our sister center, Ainaguaca, and we showed the film in Northern Ireland. Now, Northern Ireland just has, in recent history, had the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, and those communities have been healing ever since. So even though it's a broad question, you were superstars in Armagh. You were in the schools, and you met the locals and the heads, as they call them. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to be in Ireland, north of the border, and how you enjoyed that experience last year?
It was amazing. So I know that there is a need to learn the language, but what's there is the land. We were at an elementary school, and it was like a sacred place, and it was at the base of this sacred mountain. It was amazing. So what you guys have is like this connection to those sacred sites that are still there. The people are lovely, but yeah, I think that was stunning to me, is that they weren't desecrated. Like, we had over 30,000 Indian mounds here, burials. Most of them gone today, but they're still there, and that's pretty powerful, because I wonder, you could feel the energy of them. So amazing.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna double down on some of what she said. That the land was so beautiful, and the people there were really kind and awesome. All the places that we got to spend time with people. So as a recording artist, I performed music for them, for these kids. And so, like, I feel like in America, I don't know what it is, but like we're scared to like sing in front of each other and dance in front of each other and all that stuff. In Ireland, they get down. They don't care what's going on or who's looking or whatever. Like, so I was sharing a song with them, and I did the chorus one time for them. And I went through the song, and I started singing my own chorus again, like without prompts. They all did it with me. It's so loud, like so she filmed it. It was pretty cool. It's like really awesome. Like one of my favorite things that's ever happened, because and then like behind them is like all this glass, and it's those hills, that beautiful place. So I was just like, this is like a movie. These kids are awesome. Like easily, hands down, one of the best little crowds I've ever had. And I had some funny experiences too. Oh yeah, so I like going to the gym. So I went to the South Armagh gym or whatever, and everything's in kilograms, 2.2 pounds. So I grabbed these 40s, and I'm like, dang, when I get home, I better hit it harder, because I was just like, this is insane. And it was like more than twice the weight. So anyway, yeah, so that was pretty funny. But other than that, I loved meeting Cuchulainn, the Irish, or the Celtic rapper from there. Him and I had some like really cool engagement together, and we shared some cool, creative vibes together. So anyway, the place was awesome, but the people are even more awesome.
Well, some of you know this, but Patrick is a modern day A.E. Russell. He just thinks that way. And if you don't know A.E. Russell, look him up. Mystic, artist, peacemaker, just an incredible man, Protestant man. But what one highlight for me was I go to County Clare often. That's where my people are from, and I've been there over 40 years. But I've never taken a deep dive into Irish ancient culture the way that we did in Armagh, and it was profound. I got a deeper understanding of that Irish identity. And we were with a man whose grandma was a native healer, so she knew all the plants and herbs that you use to heal, and he learned them, and everybody speaking the language. It's just incredible, really, really lovely.
So, oh yeah, sorry. I will wrap it up with one last question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I took Rita's class on her and girl, so we wanted to come see this, and it's this story of your own personal family history and kind of wanting to dig deeper, but there were so many other things that are deeper, and they're just universal. The whole idea of renaming, or the giving back the land, or just how do we talk about history without acting like your brother Bill? And I just think, I don't know if you guys, could you see that as you were making this?
I didn't make it, she did.
But as you were participating, as you were, it's just like.
Well, people told me, how are you going to make this film? It's about history. You don't have 1 minute of footage from your family's past. Film is a visual medium. How the hell are you going to do this? I'm sorry for my language. So I struggled with that, and I struggled with who's going to watch it. Who wants to see my family story? Like what are the universal themes? So I spent a lot of nights around that, and every time something interesting happened when we were filming, then I had to think, okay, where does this fit? What universal message? So I'm really glad to hear what you say, and that they come through. Humans think in universal themes, life, death, and everything in between. So it was a great experience to get to struggle with that.
Just a beautiful film, so much that it seems so simple, but there so many other things, and I'm sure it's gonna reverberate for.
Thank you, everybody.